Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, 7:30 p.m. WBCQ broadcasts out of Monticello, Maine in Aroostook County. It's also heard, as of the last few weeks, on IP Nation. And IP Nation is an online entity. It comes out of New Hampshire. And you can go to ipnation.com, and you could, they have 24-hour broadcasting. And thanks to Jen Coffey, who was a guest on the show recently. She's been a good friend of Camp Constitution and an instructor a few times, and she made that happen. So that will be every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, ipnation.com, and you can listen to the broadcast. Anyway, lots of things are happening. Of course, just a few days ago, we had this terrible terrorist attack in France, in Paris. And, of course, why should people be surprised? And the tragic thing is that it seems to be most of Western Europe have a death wish. They keep on bringing people that refuse to assimilate, that will not speak the language, will not adopt the customs, etc. And a small percentage of that group have nothing but ill intent. They keep on bringing people in. Now, France was a colonial power and had influence in countries like Syria and, of course, Vietnam and Algeria. It's very interesting too. My late friend Sam Blumenfeld was a founder of American Friends of Algeria. And Algeria has a large Muslim population, but they had a Jewish population and and they had some Christians, and there was a lot of French that settled there, and things were going pretty well. People got along. They weren't killing each other until a communist-trained thug by the name of Ben Bala was able to take over, and the rest is history. So Muslims have and can maybe in some respects live peaceably with people, but this group ISIS and of course the United States, elemental in our country, played a role in creating ISIS, and so they do these horrible things, and people are so shocked. They tell us what they want to do, and then when they do it, we're shocked. We can't believe it. And you look at Paris or France, it's a socialist country. It's pretty much, I think the term God-forsaken. It's people have given up the faith, although this didn't happen recently. It's happened since the French Revolution, you could say. And there are some bright spots. There is a growing groups of French, and there's a group called, there's a Patriot Front headed by a man named Le Pen, who, they don't like what's happening, and they want to get out of the European Union. But when these countries became part of the European Union, they gave their sovereignty up, and the European Union has an open borders policy. It was very interesting. When I was stationed in Germany back in the 70s, I was in a field artillery unit, and when we were in garrison, we had some Turks that worked in the cafeteria, or the mess hall. We didn't call it cafeteria, call it mess hall. They did wash the dishes and did that kind of the busing and what have you, kinds of menial tasks that are important in any facility like that. And we used to go out in the field for a couple of weeks at a time, a month at a time, and do some serious training. And we would also have to pull KP, kitchen police. Some of us would have to work in the field kitchens. And they thought that the training was so expensive that it would be sort of a waste of time to have us peel potatoes when we should be firing howitzers and doing our training. So they would have the Turks come in. Now the conditions were relatively comfortable. They were warm. They're in the field, and they did have access to some stores that they needed to get provisions, and they had 3 square meals and a nice warm cot and hot showers. So it wasn't like they were really out in the cold like we were. And a few of the Turks refused to come out. Well, within minutes, they were sent back to Turkey. There was no second chance, no, we don't want to hurt your feelings, we don't want to. But that's changed. And today, Western Europe is going out of its way to accommodate Muslims who hate the Christian history of Western Europe. In fact, and many clergy members in Sweden, the heads of their churches there, they're taking the crosses down so not to offend the Muslim brothers. Well, folks, this is the fruition of that accommodation and really cowardice. And you look at France; it's a total state, it's a socialist state, strict gun control. Yet these people are able to, and there's surveillance everywhere. But these people are able to bring in military weapons and grenades, and it's kind of interesting how this operates. So, and somebody said, I remember a friend of mine's, sure after this happened, oh, it's coming here. You know it's coming here. It's just a matter of time. Well, folks, it's already here. I mean, 9/11, that was 15 years ago, 14 years ago. It's already here. The marathon bombing. We've had other incidences of these kinds of crimes. It was the Muslim that was in the military. It was a Fort Hood that went around shooting people up, and other incidents like this. So it's already here. So it's not like it's a question of it's going to happen here. And I don't care. You could put a spy camera on every single house and every single square foot of the United States, and these folks, because there doesn't seem to be a will. And it's interesting too. We have no real homeland security. It's a farce. The Homeland Security spends most of its time harassing old ladies at airports. And when they had this thing in Boston, this marathon bombing back in 2013, two guys. Where was the intelligence? These guys lived in the neighborhoods. They were known to many people. They had American friends, or at least claimed to be friends. But they operated out of a mosque in Boston, the Islamic Center. And the Islamic Center was the big piece of property which sits in Roxbury, a section of Boston, was sold to the Muslims by the city of Boston. It was city property for 10 cents on the dollar. And all of our liberal politicians were so touchy-feely, coexist, we love the Muslims, we just love what you do. And these two guys were members of this mosque, and that's where they got radicalized. And these people weren't Arabs. They weren't from, the Middle East. They were from a part of what used to be the Soviet Union. Yet they still, in this country where they had all the opportunities in the world, they still hate us, and they want to destroy us. And they killed 3 innocent people. And of course, the spy cameras all over downtown Boston, all the gun control laws, of course, couldn't stop low-grade, low-tech bombs, right? And then they locked down the city. I remember it was April 19th. I was picking up Larry Pratt at the airport. Larry Pratt's the head of Terrorism of America. And Larry there was an event at Lexington Green to commemorate the Battle of Lexington. And shelter in place. Well, by this point, one of the guys had already died. The older brother was shot dead. This guy's on the lam and he's wounded. Yeah, your whole city has to be, not just city, the whole greater Boston was under lockdown. You think that was the whole reason for this exercise? And the people, most people were more than happy to comply. We just love it. And these special police showed up out of nowhere with military-grade vehicles. So it's interesting is that when they do these kinds of things, things like the Patriot Act, for example, the Patriot Act didn't go after terrorists. They went after local citizens. It went after people, old ladies that fly around airports. They go after patriots, people who love this country. That's the real enemy in the eyes of our government. It isn't these Muslims. In fact, Obama is more than happy to bring in thousands, if not millions. What's her name, Merkel from Germany, the Chancellor of Germany, she's willing to, let's bring them all in. And she said, we owe it to the world. It's kind of interesting she made a comment like that. What do you mean she owes it to the world? The Nazis were very good to the Muslims. They didn't. The Muslims have no issue with the Nazis. There are a lot of groups that have issues with the Germans. The Poles and the French and the Italians, but they were actual allies. The Jewish community, but they have no issue with the Muslims. They were more than happy to accommodate Muslims. So anyway, I do want to mention. I usually mention that this program is sponsored by Camp Constitution. Among all things, Camp Constitution runs a week-long summer camp program, and next year's camp, 2016, will be held from July 10th to the 17th, and we're lining up some speakers. We will have Mrs. Christiane Hall, she's confirmed. In addition to that, we have a book publishing arm called Camp Constitution Press, And if you go to our website, campconstitution.net, you'll find some recent editions. One of them is called Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. Not that we're in favor of that, but we want to make this information available. 1961, Kennedy administration submitted this to the UN, and it's a 3-step process. Step 3 would mean that, let me see if I can read it right from the book itself here. It's only about, let's see, it's maybe 20 pages, 21 pages, 20 pages, actually 19 pages. During stage 3, by the time stage 2 has been completed, the confidence produced through a verified disarmament program, the acceptance of rules of peaceful international behavior, and the development of strengthened international peacekeeping processes within the framework of the UN should have reached a point where the states of the world can move forward to stage 3. In stage 3, progressive controlled disarmament in continuously developing principles and procedures of international law will proceed to a point where no state would have the military power to challenge the progressively strengthened UN peace force. So let me stop there. So here is a UN standing world army that could not be opposed by anyone. And all international disputes would be settled according to the agreed principles of international conduct. That means whatever the despots of the UN agree to. States would retain only those forces, non-nuclear armaments, and establishments required for the purpose of maintaining internal order. So you'll have a police state. They would also support and provide agreed manpower for the UN peace force. So the American soldiers would have to be pawns for the New World Order for the UN standing army. The UN peace force, equipped with agreed types and quantities of armaments, would be fully functioning. The manufacture of armaments would be prohibited except for those of agreed types and quantities to be used by the UN peace force and those required to maintain internal order, the Gestapo. That's not in there. I just added the Gestapo, but that's what it is, state police. All other armaments would be destroyed or converted to peaceful purposes. So how do you convert a weapon to a peaceful purpose if you don't outright destroy it? Well, you take it from a law-abiding citizen and you give it to a thug wearing a UN helmet. That's how you convert it to a peaceful purpose. And what's the track record of the beloved UN peace forces? Just go online. I challenge you if you think, oh, maybe this is a good idea. Go online and look at UN peace forces and rape. And we're not talking about just what happened in Katanga back in the early 60s, where white soldiers raped and murdered peaceful people of the province of Katanga, which was part of Zaire, now at that time the Belgian Congo. We're talking about more recent examples. And it's funny, the UN has all these conferences on racism and how we need to eradicate racism, yet when they bring in these troops, they commit racist crimes, usually white soldiers against blacks. Not always the case. I think they had a lot of Indians and soldiers in some of these situations back in the 60s. But back in the 60s, you had a lot of Irish soldiers, and it was just in Somalia in the 90s. You get do a search for some UN troops in Somalia. You will find white soldiers torturing and murdering blacks, causing little children to do disgusting things, and of course there's the rape. The child rape and so forth. And this isn't something that's an abnormality. It's something that happens on a regular basis. And when there's a need for them to take action, they stand down, like they did in Rwanda. While there was 900,000 souls were being liquidated, the UN stood down. So the UN, one of these wonderful peace forces, stand down when they're supposed to be doing something positive to save people's lives. So that's the policy, and this is still the policy. This has not changed, and this explains a lot of their behavior. It explains why there's a need for there's a call for a federal control of police, and this has been an ongoing program of the leftists and the globalists, is to have a police force that's controlled by the federal government. So if they're successful, and I don't think they will be, by the way, but if they are successful, they may be called the Madawaska Police or the Portland Police or the Boston Police or the Los Angeles Police, but they will not be controlled locally. So that name, it will be just a name only. and there will be no accountability. Yes, I know there's a lot of bad local cops. They exist. Let's face it. We're not apologizing for corrupt local police, but I'd rather have a corrupt local policeman where there's opportunities to address the situation, to remediate the problem, because you know right well that there won't be any at the federal level. And and they'll be under the control of the Justice Department, and I really should call it the Injustice Department. Just look at the Obama administration's Justice Department gun running. Look at the President Clinton, his administration. Look what they did in Ruby Ridge and in Waco. And it doesn't matter who's Republican or Democrat. There was very little accountability. I mean, here's an FBI sharpshooter at Ruby Ridge in Idaho that shoots a woman with a baby in her arms. Yeah, the father, Randy Weaver, finally got a few $1 million in settlement. That doesn't bring back his family. And these FBI agents, there's one thing they're good at. They're crack shots. And they're never supposed to take a shot at someone, if there's a child or a woman or a non-combatant type of person. They're supposed to stand down. And he got rewarded for that. What kind of police officials do stuff like this? Certainly, as much as J. Edgar Hoover, lots of people have issues with him. I guarantee you that would have never happened in the J. Edgar Hoover FBI. Another thing, you have not found J. Edgar Hoover going over to Moscow with his KGB counterpart and say, "Together we are invincible," as Louis Freeh did back in the Clinton administration. You see. But anyway, on that note, I'm going to be up in Maine this week. I know a lot of people in Maine listen to this show, although it's heard all over the world. I will be at the Dwyer Library in Saco tomorrow, Tuesday. That would be at 6:30 p.m. So Dwyer Library will be giving a presentation on support your local police and keep them independent. And then Wednesday, I will be at the American Legion Hall in Waldoboro, Maine. That will start at 7 o'clock. Thursday, I have one in a private home in the capital area. I won't give that number out, but if you happen to hear the show and live in the area, you can give me a call at 857-498-1309. And then, let's see, Friday night I'll be in Lincoln, Maine at the Masonic Hall in the meeting rooms there, and that will be at 7 o'clock. So hopefully if you're listening to the show and you live in the area, you'd like to get a chance to meet me and hear what I have to say about supporting local police. And again, we know there are some local police that are bad. Our job isn't just to stop the federalization of the local police. It's to help policemen become constitutionalists. I can remember back in the 90s, in the wake of the Brady bill passing, became the Brady law, I was manning an information table in Vermont at a fair, and there was a magazine, the New American Magazine, which had a feature story about sheriffs bucking the Brady law. And a gentleman showed up. He was wearing a jumpsuit, and he had a badge. I just thought he might have been security for the fair. I didn't know any more than at the time. So he's reading the article intently. And I had mentioned a sheriff in Vermont was bucking it. And he said, "Yes, I'm that sheriff, Sam Frank." And Sam and I became very friendly. And Sam told me that initially his opposition to the Brady law had nothing to do with the Second Amendment of the Constitution. He said our county, which is Orange County, Vermont, he said we simply couldn't afford to implement the Brady law. He said we didn't have the ability to pay for all the things they had to do to comply with it. And I know a portion of that was struck. I don't remember all the details. But along the way, he became a constitutionalist. And his deputies, because he was an elected official and he was accountable to the voters, his deputies became constitutionalists, whether they liked it or not. And he became a better police officer, a law enforcement officer, as a result. So that's what a lot of these policemen are being trained by the FBI. They're being trained by the military, and they need to know that it's a mistake to rely on the federal government for their support and their training. So we do a lot of outreach in that regard. So hopefully some of you can make it to. And if not, and you're interested in having a presentation, then give me a call. And if you live in the United States anyway, the rest of the world, I don't know what to tell you. But 857-498-1309. I want to change topics for a few seconds here. And last week, I had the privilege of being with Duke Pesta. Duke was a guest on here, I think it may have been last week or week before. And Duke is a professor of English at the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh, and he became one of the top, if not the top critic of Common Core in the United States. And we were in Albany, New York, and then in Manchester and Concord, New Hampshire, did some radio shows, in studio, some of the local radio shows. But why we decided to go to Concord, New Hampshire, is that the day he was up there, it would have been last Tuesday, the 10th of November, a man named Marc Tucker happened to be addressing some legislators up there. Now, New Hampshire's out of session. They don't go back into session to early December, and then they adjourn until January. But there was about 40 or 50 people, mostly legislators, in the room, and Marc Tucker, M-A-R-C, was one of the keynote speakers. And if you know who Marc Tucker is, you can understand why we would want to be there to expose Mr. Tucker. Marc Tucker is your consummate educational elitist. You can say he's an heir to John Dewey. And in the wake of Bill Clinton's election, first time to become president, Marc Tucker sent Hillary Clinton an 18-page letter basically gushing over how wonderful it is to have Bill Clinton elected and all kinds of wonderful change and progress. And he is a total statist. He despises the local control of education and, of course, the traditional family. It's all about control, control, control. And anyway, Sam Blumenfeld, who was our late friend, he had a monthly newsletter. And we archived all of these newsletters on Camp Constitution's website. And I was able to find his December of 1995, and anybody who's listening can go to the website and find it for yourself. He dedicated that newsletter to Marc Tucker. Who is Marc Tucker? And it wasn't, he didn't run the whole letter, but he ran excerpts of this 18-page letter that Tucker had sent to Hillary. And he's mentioning his good friend, David Rockefeller. This would be the son of David, who was now in his 90s. Anyway, we were able to get this about 100 copies reprinted, and we had folks passing these out at the meeting. So everybody that was in this meeting got a copy of his newsletter, including Marc Tucker. And we had a press conference with Duke Pesta. We had about 15 or so legislators. Again, they're out of session, so 15 legislators, there's a lot of people to be there when they're out of session. And Duke Pesta made a great case against Common Core and also exposed Marc Tucker for who he was. So it was a good week. It's interesting, too, about Common Core. Not one elected official voted for Common Core, but 46 states took it because they took the federal money that wasn't voted on either. So you see, and now you try to get rid of it. And a lot of these people that call themselves conservatives that love the Constitution, and they're not doing much to get rid of it. There's a grassroots support in Massachusetts where I live. We can actually put it on the ballot, and people are getting signatures to get enough. We need about 65,000 to put it on the ballot next year, next November, and to get it removed. So it's a very difficult process. And it was interesting, too, because this Marc Tucker's appearance, there were 4 members of an education committee, the state House, the House of Representatives committee, that sponsored him. 2 of them were Republicans, a lad and a state rep, Wolf. And it was interesting, both these Republicans also supported the Wolf Pack resolution for an Article 5 convention. So just because they have an R beside the name doesn't make them conservative or patriots. And in fact, Jeb Bush, running for the United States president, governor of Florida, Jeb was a big supporter of Common Core. Mike Huckabee, this wonderful Christian conservative, he also supports Common Core. John Kasich, Ohio governor, also supports Common Core. And Scott Walker, I think, recently dropped out of the race. I don't know if he supported it, but he didn't do a whole lot to oppose it. And Kasich, of course, as well as Huckabee, are pushing for an Article 5 convention, too, because they want to get the federal government out of control of the states, except when it comes to Common Core. Of course, that's okay. We'll take that. But we'll be selective on what we don't want the federal government doing, taking over. They can take over our schools, that's fine, but maybe we don't want them taking over this or that. Yeah. So anyway, that was. There was another item. Oh, so I was talking about 7277, and that's available on the Camp Constitution bookstore. And I don't know if I put up the other one is called A Communist Plot Against the Free World Police. And this was about and it was an expose of crowd handling methods. And this is about the same amount of pages, actually 32 pages. And I don't know if I put it up yet, but it will soon. But it just mentioning that the Communist Party, they found some documents from a communist agent in Europe, how the local police, if not to be taken over, be infiltrated and then be used as a vehicle for status control. So these things are important documents and things that, and that's what Camp Constitution would like to get things back in print. Most of these both are available on the internet in a PDF format. But I guess, a lot of people don't know these things even exist. And that's why it's important to put these things back in print and make them known to people. And I do want to encourage, now with the few minutes we have left, I was spending more time going through some of the Sam Blumenfeld material. He had willed his library to me. I took possession of it prior to his passing. And there's just so many things in there. You have to go through it very carefully. But if you go to our website, campconstitution.net, and you'll see Sam Blumenfeld material, you'll see some incredible things that were archived, that are already archived. We have a lot more to do, and we're adding it as time permits. Being an all-volunteer organization, it's kind of difficult. We can't you could have someone full-time. But we've uploaded a lot of his speeches that are in a video format, audio format, speeches he gave. And you listen to Sam from the 1980s, and you say, my goodness, how did he know about this stuff back then? Because that's what he did. And a lot of people are learning about it now. And some people are still in denial. There's also some of his videos. We even have we have some of his stuff from the early 60s that was on a reel, but it's audio, and that will be uploaded soon too. And Sam was also, he was an eclectic writer. There's a lot of his great writings, and he was involved with a number of different organizations and wrote for different, we can't post it all. He wrote for WorldNet Daily, some of this copywritten material that we wouldn't be able to put up. But some unpublished things, I just found one of the manuscripts, the unpublished manuscript on the JFK assassination from the mid-60s. He wrote another one in the mid-70s, which we'll be able to get. And we may even put in a book format. We haven't decided yet. And there was also a manuscript on how the communists set up the far right, quotation marks at far right. It's a lot of information about George Lincoln Rockwell, the neo-Nazi that was murdered back in the mid-60s. And some of his speeches he gave on various topics. One of the topics is how the creation of a black underclass, and how illiteracy greatly affects the black community and makes it impossible, very difficult to get beyond a low-level, entry-level job. And as a result of that, many of the inner-city blacks were, a small percentage of them, ended up joining gangs and committing crimes, et cetera, because of their poor education. And that, by the way, happens in white communities too. It's not unique to the black communities, but it's a great expose on how the black underclass was created. These people who call themselves progressives, they're many of them are the true racists, because they don't want to see people get beyond certain thing. And the worst segregationists can't hold a candle to these progressives who are inherently racists, and that's pointed out in these writings. So anyway, we want to thank you for listening. Camp Constitution Radio, heard every Monday at 7:30 p.m. on WBCQ The Planet, and also on YouTube and IP Nation on Saturday afternoons at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for listening, and God bless.